I've been holding off on making this video for quite some time now because I wanted to finish a few series, but now I've officially decided to make it, so here is my top 10 anime and manga so far. Keep in mind that this is my top 10 list and it may be different from yours, and that's fine, but these are just what I think are the 10 best series I've read and watched so far. Now, as of right now, this is my top 10, but I am reading a few series currently, so this list will most likely change in the future. But with that said, let's get into it. At the number 10 spot, I have Vinland Saga. I originally had Full Metal Alchemist and the Fate series in this top 10, but I haven't seen those series since they initially aired, so I decided not to put them in this video just because I can't remember much of it. Now, Vinland Saga is the most recent series I finished, and I originally watched the anime in 2020 and decided to read it recently, and it was everything it was hyped up to be as. The prologue is as good as it was in the anime, but Farmland was some peak fiction. Now, when people usually hype up a series or an arc, it usually disappoints me, but Farmland did not miss. Thorfinn and Einar's character development and journeys are great, and even the side characters were good in Farmland. There's just something about Vagabond and Vinland Saga's farm arcs that are so good. The Vinland Saga we're currently on is shaping to be even better than Farmland somehow, and the recent chapter with Hild and Thorfinn really hit me and put Thorfinn in my top 4 MCs. The only reason Vinland is at 10 and not any higher is because I found the Eastern Expedition arc weak compared to the others, and felt like Sigurd's character development carried it. But I do see Vinland going up higher on this list if this final arc keeps going as it is. At the number 9 spot, I have Vagabond. Now, Vagabond was something I read recently, and it's one of my favorite reads just because of how good Inoue's art style is. Obviously, the art isn't the best thing about Vagabond, but the art just makes it so much more easier and enjoyable to read when it has a good art style along with a good story. Now, Vagabond is a very deep and philosophical series with some amazing characters. Musashi is a great MC who goes from this bloodlusted kid who wants to be invincible to a very deep philosophical man. Now, I did enjoy Vagabond since the beginning, but I felt like I really took off doing the Kojiro arc, where we were introduced to Kojiro, who was my favorite character in the series. After that arc, the series hit a peak that I never fell off from, and every arc after was amazing, especially the Yoshioka arc and the farming arc. The only reason I don't have Vagabond higher is because it went on hiatus before the final battle, and because I wanted to see more of Otsu and Matahachi, but regardless, Vagabond is amazing. To make up for this Vagabond void I am currently reading Slam Dunk and have read some of Real, which are Inoue's other works if you didn't know, and maybe Slam Dunk might surpass Vagabond. Now at number 8 I have Monster. Now Monster and Vagabond are very interchangeable for me, and it was hard to choose what to put higher, but I ultimately put Monster because it has an ending, and an ending which I like. Monster is amazing and somehow still not my favorite Urasawa work, which just shows how talented he is. Now, I expected Johan to be a great antagonist because of how highly he's praised, and he was, but what really surprised me was Tenma. Aside from those two, Grimmer was my favorite character, and while I liked Nina and the rest of the cast, I felt like these three shined the most. Without saying any spoilers, Grimmer had some great moments, but I will say he did have some crazy plot armor in some scenes. Johan is a top 3 anime and manga antagonist, and Tenma is underrated. If you haven't read Monster, you should check it out, it's worthy of all the praise it gets. At the number 7 spot, I have Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan is one of the best series to watch weekly. I've been watching it weekly since season 2 and I've looked forward to it every week since. Now, I did pick up the manga before I ended so I wouldn't get spoiled in the ending, and I will say it's not a bad ending, just not a satisfying ending for me at least. I mean, my favorite TV show Game of Thrones doesn't have the best ending either, so Attack on Titan didn't necessarily get lower on my list due to the end, but it just didn't get higher when it could have. Regardless, it has one of the best stories in anime and manga, only second to One Piece for me. It has some of the best plot twists, action sequences, and characters in manga, and Isayama is a genius of a writer. It just sucks that the ending wasn't the best, but it's not as bad as some people make it sound. At number 6, I have Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter is interchangeable with Attack on Titan, and they both switch often. Now, I'm excited that it's back, but I can't bring myself to catch up to the manga. I just find the anime much better. From episode 1, the series is great and it only gets better. The main cast is good, Nen is probably the best power system in anime and manga, and the antagonists are great. Chimera is my favorite arc by far, and Miriam is the best antagonist in the series. I do like Crollo and Hisoka, but Miriam was in another league for me, and he has one of the best conclusions in anime and manga. The main cast for me is enjoyable, but not anything crazy. Whenever I see them, I just think of them as a less enjoyable Team Urameshi, which is fine, considering both are made by Togashi. The Succession War arc is being built up to be a good setup for the Dark Continent invasion, and I have enjoyed what we've seen of Kurapika so far in this arc, and can't wait to see Agon and Killua return in the story. The way the Dark Continent has been hyped up to be, I could see it being the best arc in the series, and with Togashi already done 12 new chapters, it gives me hope we'll really get it. At number 5, I have the Naruto series. Now, some of you who know me from TikTok or Twitter might be surprised because I always hate on it, but Naruto is great. It's a series I grew up with along with the rest of the big three and Dragon Ball, and I always find myself going back to rewatch it. Watching Shippuden weekly was brutal, but the wait was always worth it. Naruto has the best antagonist cast, no doubt the best anime fights, and some great storytelling and plot twists. The Akatsuki is arguably the coldest antagonist group in anime and manga and has some great villains despite most being anti-heroes. The only issues I have with Naruto is that the side cast has a lot of forgotten characters like Rock Lee, and I didn't like the Kaguya stuff. Naruto is a good main character, not the best but still very enjoyable, and I grew up with him, so seeing him go from the kid despised by the village to Hokage was amazing, but I do kinda wish his Hokage ceremony was in the actual series and not in Boruto. Sasuke is also a great duo antagonist and reminds me a lot of Hiei and Kurapika, who I know he is inspired off of, and all three are great in their own way. Despite all the hate Naruto gets, it's still among the best shonen series. Okay, now we're getting into the top 4. Now the top 4 I don't think are going to change anytime in the future. I think they're solidified in there, but if any series do come in the future that overtake it, I'd be glad to see that, but at this moment, yeah, I don't think any series is going to overtake it. So here's my top 4. Now at the number 4 spot I have Berserk. Now Berserk is a series I held off reading for a few years and I finally got to it last summer and finished it a few months ago. And the reason it took me so long to finish is because I was reading it with every new deluxe release. Prior to that, I did watch the Golden Age movies in 2019, so I had some understanding of the eclipse and what was going to happen. When I heard about Kentaro Miura's passing, that's when I decided to finally read Berserk. Now, prior to reading Berserk, I was mostly a shonen and anime only guy. The only manga I really read up until last summer was One Piece, which I read weekly since 2014, so when I finally read Berserk and found out how good it was, it made me get into more manga. Now, talking about the actual series, Berserk is phenomenal. Golden Age is one of the best manga arcs. Black Swordsman is a great intro arc, and personally I also think Lost Children is one of the best arcs. Some people kind of brush it off as filler, but I really enjoyed Jill's story and especially this panel. We all know about the eclipse also, so I don't really need to talk about it, but Guts is one of the best main characters and Griffith is up there as one of the best antagonists in manga, so Berserk being at number 4 is no surprise. Berserk's art style is my favorite manga art style by far, and a lot of times I found myself staring at panels for long periods just admiring how good the art was. And for those of you who haven't read Berserk, you need to read it with the deluxe volumes because it just looks amazing and you don't want to miss out on that. And now at the number 3 spot I have one of my favorite reads of all time and my favorite read in the past year, 20th Century Boys. Now, this was the first series I began after I started collecting Berserk last summer, and I do want to mention that all the seinen series I have in this list I collected physically before I began them, and I'm so glad I did because I couldn't imagine reading them online and liking them as much. One day I was walking around my local bookstore and saw volume 1, and I was like, hey, I've seen people on TikTok hype this up, so let me try it, and that volume sucked me right into the series. It sucked because the second volume was out of stock while I had the rest of the series, so I had to wait a few months, but it was worth waiting for because the moment I got that volume I couldn't put the series down. It's like the new bar for me, like anytime someone recommends me a new series, I always say, is it as good as 20th Century Boys? Friend is spectacular, easily my favorite antagonist in manga, and yes, he's better than Johan and Griffith. Kenji at first I thought would be one of my favorite main characters, but he didn't get as much screen time as I wanted him to. Kana and the rest of the cast are also great. There's two scenes in the series that I can remember exactly. First off, the friend reveal, which had me thinking for like 20 minutes on who he might be, and I knew the next page was a face reveal, and the second scene is where he enters the game, which actually had me scared. Every time I begin a new series, I always wonder if it'll surpass 20th Century Boys because I want to read something that good again, but it never happens. But yeah, 20th Century Boys is a must read. At the number 2 spot, I have Yu Hakusho. Now, before I say anything, I know Netflix is making a live action for it, and even though the casting looks terrible, I'm still hyped because we get more content and I've been waiting for years. Now, this is my favorite anime along with my number 1 series, but I do think the series above this is better. Yu Hakusho is my favorite main character with Yusuke Urameshi, my favorite duo antagonist with Hiei, and honestly my favorite main cast tied with my number 1 series. The dub is phenomenal. Toguro and Sensui are some of the best shonen antagonists, and the entire main cast is cold as hell. The only problem I would have with Yu Hakusho is the final saga because it had the most potential but it was rushed, but regardless I still enjoyed it. The Dark Tournament arc is my favorite tournament arc along with the Cell Saga and Chapter Black is amazing. I also want to mention how Yu Hakusho has inspired so many new animes today but doesn't get the credit it deserves. I always see people praise Bleach for influencing new gen anime when Yu Hakusho is the one who inspired Kubo and Bleach. But yeah, anyways, watch Yu Hakusho if you haven't, it's peak. Now at the number 1 spot I have One Piece, and this is never going to change. Now I don't think there's much I need to say about One Piece, but it's the best piece of fiction ever created. There's nothing more hype to me, and it's crazy to say we're in the final saga. Luffy is tied with Yusuke as my favorite main character. I love the Straw Hats, the world building is unmatched along with the lore. The only weak thing about One Piece is the antagonist, or well, that's what people would like to say, but the final saga has some great potential antagonists like Blackbeard, Akainu, Emu, and even Shanks possibly. But yeah, One Piece is at my number 1 spot. I don't think that's ever going to change, and yeah, I'm hyped for the new chapters. This list will probably change in the future, and I'll probably make an update video at that point, but for now, this is my top 10. That's about it, thanks.